All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series. But the QA, obviously the important part, stands for question and answers. We like to have kind of an interactive conversation about the week's top news stories, or maybe some news broke over the weekend. Gets us a fresh start for our week, but we want to make sure we're digging into the stories, we're following stories as they develop, and we're not just kind of falling prey to that headline outrage, clickbaity kind of behavior. I'm already seeing an incredible group of names here in the live chat. We had a pre-show conversation, and something I'm going to be addressing maybe in a future episode of just where this show streams. Right now I'm co-streaming to a bunch of different places, but I typically send out Twitch links. For a while there, I was really like Twitch only, but some of Twitch's more recent policy changes have been really difficult, have been really frustrating to deal with. So we'll probably be hosting some kind of conversation in the near future. Just where do we go? How do we do a live show? And I really didn't want to put all my eggs in YouTube's basket. So I was joking, but maybe I wasn't. At some point, maybe the show's just like live stream on LinkedIn, right? Because what business is like really gonna stop you from going to check your LinkedIn for your business communications? I don't know. It's pretty wild. So I hope everybody out there had a lovely weekend. As you might be able to hear, I'm really going to try and keep the biology to a minimum on this stream, but I absolutely will not be able to catch every sniffle, snort, clearing of throat, and slurping of coffee and water. I'm feeling so much better than where I was last week, but you can hear I'm still not quite 100%, and that also means our show's probably got to have to be our normal allotted time of 2 hours, even though I regularly run into hour three. But on top of that, I might try and cut this week's show just a little shorter to try and keep us on task. Let me get a quick drink of coffee here. One second. That's hilarious. The Ish 9. Wow, you can stream on LinkedIn? We're streaming on LinkedIn right now. If you go to thelinkedin.com, there is a stream. LinkedIn is so terrible. I hate it so much with the fiery burning passion of 1,000 suns. It's like emblematic to me of everything that's wrong with social media. Jabotnik, can you comment on LinkedIn? By the way, their privacy terms are pretty iffy. Yes, yeah, we have had the occasional person come in and comment on LinkedIn. You might not see it in the main, but if you watch over here on the sidebar, you'll see little YouTube and Twitch icons, and every now and then you'll see a LinkedIn icon kind of kick in. It's pretty hilarious. I keep hoping for some kind of like open source Mastodon style streaming solution. I don't know that'll ever really happen. So I do need to do a couple quick shout outs here. JMan150 subscribed at tier 1. They've been subscribed for 28 months over on Twitch. And John Gao subscribed to Prime, subscribed for 17 months. And apparently me saying maybe it's time to leave Twitch, now we're in the middle of a hype train on Twitch. I just can't with these mega corporations right now. But the important part being JMan150, John Gao, thank you so much for your support, for your continued support, for joining these conversations, trying to help us keep the lights on here in the Gadget Lab. And you two both get a terrible acapella, sick, scratchy voice, fanfare of glory. Much better than last week. Still awful. I couldn't catch that. Someone actually clipped my fanfare of glory last week, and it is one of the saddest and most pathetic sounding things I think I've ever heard in my entire life. And I hope that that audio lives on somewhere. If not in your hearts, maybe somewhere on the internet. So, like I said, we've got some absolutely great names in the chat already. Seeing J-Man 150, Pup on Tech, Lee Hammond, JGJ, Fat Produce, what's up, Andrew? Abhishek, we got Kubish, Kubiki, saying, hey, feel better, my brother. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Jabotnik, the Ish9. I said J-Man. H2O Taku. We've got Vazikos. We've got a full crew here. Pontus P. I know I'm missing some. Kermo13, Ron Guido, John Gao. What's up, John Gao? Bradley Larcher. Bradley was active this morning. He was sharing some stuff that we are absolutely going to be talking about in this podcast. So, normally I preface, hey, we got a really heavy this and we've got a really light that. So I have a couple news stories that we definitely need to hit, but this is actually going to be a pretty heavy gadget block. I tend to go light on the gadget blocks just because I feel like we kind of cover this stuff, and if you follow me around social media, this is the stuff we talk about just sort of all week, every week. But this week, there are enough of these little kind of individual stories and follow-ups to things we've talked about previously on the podcast that I really felt like, hey, we got to go heavy gadget block this week. So I want to jump in, hit the ground running. We're going to do some housekeeping, and because of my voice, housekeeping was a little... Last week's production schedule was a little weird because I couldn't shoot and I couldn't talk. So by the time I was able to put something together, we were kind of deep into the week, but I did get some writing done. And I keep saying this, and I need to kick my own butt, but I need to write more. I like kind of exploring an idea kind of long form, but just putting it out in text. And I feel like this urge or this need I have to turn everything into a video is really slowing me down. I should be doing more reviews in text. I should be doing more editorials in text. I should be doing more just for funsies articles in text. I really feel like that's kind of critical for not only the health of my physical corporeal being, but like my mental health, and then also the health of my websites, where these kinds of articles get a ton of traffic when I start regularly producing stuff like this. I should really rebuild this. I should be the change I want to see in the world. Oh, Pup on Tech, I really appreciate that. Your writing is fantastic. I wish I could write like you. I am not a great writer, but I am old, and I have come to the point where I understand what my role is on the internet, and I know how to write like how I talk. So I feel like, you know, I've at least accomplished that. So thank you. I get, sort of, blushy when people say they like my stuff. So, quick housekeeping. I did publish publicly the article. This started as a Patreon article. Of course, phone specs matter. It's silly to argue otherwise. And this is now public on somegadgetguy.com. And it's just a rundown. It's an aggressive... I do this about once a year. It's an aggressive criticism with some sardonic and sarcastic elements, but it's an aggressive criticism of what I feel the big problem is with the current state of tech influencer commentary. And I'm really tired of these lazy arguments that only go to support massive corporations that, oh, you can't judge a phone on its specs, and specs don't matter, and aren't all phones basically the same? And to me, it's wild. I mean, like, I'll go into the nerdiest parts of Mastodon and see people, like, so excited that there's, like, a new ROM and, like, a new flash, and I'm keeping my OnePlus 3 out of retirement. And you're like, that's great for you. I'm so happy. Your basic communicating device that you don't do anything on except, like, phone calls, text messages, email, and scrolling social media is staying out of a landfill. I'm so excited for your custom ROM solution there, or your security. The people who are taking pixels and flashing them to more, sort of hardened, secure operating systems and removing, de-Googling their phones. Awesome. I'm so happy for you. But I am trying to host a conversation about mobile tech that can start to replace other more traditional computers. And that's where I feel there is an untapped potential for the future. Instead of watching Apple, Google, Samsung convince us that we need to spend over $1,000 on a basic communicator. So all the people that kind of glom on to the, oh, but I don't even need the most expensive, latest and greatest because I do almost nothing on a phone, that's not helping. That's still encouraging the mind share of phone does phone things, and it normalizes the idea of $1,000 plus phone. Well, I mean, these tech nerds don't do anything on their phones, and they're really into like the rooting and the ROMing and all that really high tech stuff, and they don't even do anything on their phones. So I have to do one of these a year, or my brain explodes like the movie Scanners. And this is the result of this year is really kind of attacking this lazy, half-hearted defense of the Pixel being kind of an underperforming device for its price tag. Moving right along, I in criticizing Google, I had to immediately criticize Apple. And this is one I might actually do like a standalone podcast just based on this article. The iPhone 17 Air is the realization of Apple executives' greed. And I start this article with the DOJ lawsuit that was filed in 2024 that we did talk about on this podcast. As Apple's executives openly acknowledge, quote, in looking at it with hindsight, I think going forward we need to set a stake in the ground for what features we think are good enough for the consumer. I would argue we're already doing more than what would have been good enough, but we find it very hard to regress our product features year over year. I believe that quote was taken from 2020 communications in 2022 or 2023. So there is no iPhone 17 Plus. The iPhone 17 Plus, which would have had two cameras and a huge battery, has been replaced by the iPhone 17 Air, which has one camera and a significantly smaller battery. It would seem to me that following this lawsuit that the DOJ filed in 2024, that Apple has found a way to regress product features year over year and keep you paying higher prices. It's the same thing. Like the Pixel 10 Pro XL is still technically a price hike. The base model storage did get bigger, but so did the price tag. The iPhone 17 Air fills that gap where the iPhone 17 Plus would have been, but the iPhone 17 Plus probably would have been, I mean, like the iPhone, let's say this, the iPhone 16 Plus started out with less storage, but was $100 cheaper. So we went from normalizing an $899 phone to reducing the battery and cutting off a camera and climbing up to $999. Do you see how we keep normalizing higher and higher and higher prices with the expectation you're going to do less and less and less on your phone? They are regressing features year over year, and we have a whole army of bootlicking tech enthusiasts going, oh, but I just like the design and average consumers and who does things on their phones. Because the third part of this last week of housekeeping was my love letter to India. Dear India, I think you can do better than cloud computers. And if you don't watch this video because you don't live in India, that is okay. Because I'm going to say a lot of really gnarly things about what I think about American consumers. In fact, it's kind of a masked diatribe on how little I think of American consumerism and how advertising and marketing passes for the bulk majority of consumers' tech education these days and how that's terrible and how I hope Indians avoid that. I keep railing against it. I'm not making a lot of traction, but there are some clear trends happening as India's middle class grows and they're spending more on more expensive portable electronics, but they are a mobile first kind of economy. And if anyone can drag us out of this tech apathy, like phones are so boring, but I've done nothing to change my behavior. I just want the phone to show up and entertain me. I don't want to have to do anything, but phones are boring and they used to be exciting because I don't have any imagination for what I do on a phone. Feel like the next 500 million people who get online, not only coming from India, are going to do some of the most radical and exciting stuff in the mobile space that we've ever seen at probably the lowest price points. So, that actually made it to video. 2 articles in a video. And if you don't see a clear theme emerging from my commentary here, it's getting pretty dire, folks. We keep giving attention and traffic to the worst, lowest effort, most marketing friendly kinds of content. And everyone out there will, like, for the hardcore techies, they'll go and they'll share that content to call out those lazy influencers. But that gives them traffic and attention. We're doing it wrong. What we need to do is start starving those videos of attention. We need to start starving them of shares, of comments, clicks, views, time on site, everything. You see someone give you a lazy, half-baked defense of a terrible business practice, the best thing you can do is walk away and ignore that you've ever seen it. Or click not interested in YouTube, even though those algorithms don't really do much for us anymore these days. The worst thing you can do is, I'm going to share this video and I'm going to call this guy out and I'm going to put it on threads and then everyone will see. And then you're just going to give them a ton more traffic. They're going to make more money. So it just reinforces the business practice of doing these terrible influencer videos. So, man, this is so not sustainable, y'all. Let me take a drink of coffee. That's it for housekeeping. We're gonna jump into some news. I'll check out just a couple comments here in just a sec. But I was really up in my feels when I couldn't talk, and I feel like I got some pretty good writing done when I couldn't talk. Okay, sorry, I'm way behind on all these. These are great. Oh, Michael C saying the Nova launcher thing was predictable, but when the sale happened, the developers and some of the hardcore fans, we get so mad if you suggest this would happen. That one broke my heart. I didn't really put it in the lineup last week or this week. It's just I Nova launcher fell into obsolescence for me, and I haven't loaded it up in years. And as a reviewer, I've been trying to live in more the software that comes on the phones. I got really lazy for a while there where I would put Nova Launcher on everything, and it did kind of get in the way of what I felt the experience would be if someone bought a phone. So I had to take a step back, but I really miss those sort of golden era days of Nova Launcher. Oh, Mike Mack, again, thank you. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy your written pieces. They're really well thought out, and you can tell you put a lot of effort into them. I think this is something that's important to me enough that I keep saying I'm going to do it, but now I actually need to kick my own butt and really maybe focus on one written piece, either a written editorial or a written review every week. From Charaf Edine McCulloch, I've mispronounced your name and I apologize. Hey, just watched your 1-inch smartphone camera sensor video from 2 years ago. Is there any 2025 update? I mean, did they improve or should we just avoid them since apparently the trend is continuing? So you probably caught my 1-inch is bad video. There's 2 parts to that. I am a huge proponent of the 1-inch type camera sensor, and I really feel like that's one of those technological advancements that techies glaze over is sensor size. And so in my iPhone 17 article, I talk about camera sensor size differences there too. The bigger the sensor, the better the performance. As a general trend, and when we're really saying like sort of generation to generation, it's just, it keeps playing out. And things like, you know, ISO, noise, color, dynamic range, everything gets better. So the only reasons why you might be concerned about a 1-inch type sensor is if you're so inexperienced with photography that You kind of draw out the worst aspects of depth of field. Like, oh, I went to take this photo and now my subject's all blurry. And you have a shallower depth of field on a 1-inch type sensor. Let me get this down. Some people talking about Nova. Oh, from Z-Dog. Good morning. I love the India Focus video. Sad about corporate bootlicking and very, very sad about Nova Launcher. Michael C. also saying, I noticed this is starting to happen to laptop reviews to some extent. It's really good for the basics as they review a $1,500 product. And I feel like that's yet another corporate marketing trend. That is someone who is more interested in linking products in YouTube ad revenue than someone who is legitimately a laptop reviewer. And again, it's like, it's another opportunity. You see someone who delivers a lazy, incomplete review just to serve you an affiliate link. Are you going to share that video and call them out? Or are you going to go to Notebook Check and find a similar product and maybe share that video and on your social media say, hey, I just saw a terrible, lazy review of this product, but the folks at Notebook Check did this right. You know what I mean? We can affect change in these algorithms. We're going to be small, we're going to be tiny, but that little start, that little seed planted, so many times I've done it. Like, hey, I just saw this terrible video about the Surface Duo. So instead, I'm going to share Shane Craig's video. You know, like, do you know what that means to a creator when they see someone's work referenced like that? Do you know how you just made that dude's day? Someone produced something so bad, I was motivated to find a good version of this, and I'm going to share that out instead. But social media wants us to fight. I just did it again. I just to see, like, I get almost no traffic on Threads, right? So I went to my YouTube comments because I can always find garbage YouTube comments. And just like, I bet you, with no prompting or with no other interactions on Threads, I'm going to share a screen grab of a really awful comment that I got. Bam! Threads blew up that post. That post got more traffic than like my last 10 video shares combined, right? Because all Threads wants is to have us at each other's throats. For us to be pissed off and arguing, because that's engagement and that's time on site. So every time you see it, your instinct is going to be like, oh, but that person got something wrong. And they know it. They want you to be mad at them and share it, because influencers would have to have some capacity for shame to change their behavior. But the only thing that's going to change their behavior is getting starved of attention. Sorry, I'm really sniffly, and I apologize. You're going to hear some of that while I just tried to breathe. Sorry, there's so many good comments here. From Michael C. again, crazy watching people in real time go from not even thinking about thin phone to having contempt for it to buying it at launch at full price. That is pretty hilarious. Oh, Majid. So, okay, last week I did a guest appearance on Atypical Doctor's podcast, and now the second half of that's another like almost 3-hour conversation. So that's out now. I'll share some links on social media after the show. Jabotnik is saying, what's the cheapest phone that has video out support? Out currently, I believe the cheapest new phones that have some kind of video output support would be Pixel A series. So you pick yourself up a Pixel A9, Pixel 9a, or a Pixel 8a. I believe, yes, 8 series is where we started getting video output support on Pixels. The reason why I did my India love letter, though, is we're trying to link certain features to higher priced products. And video output does not depend on any category of USB. iPhones have video output support with USB 2 on their USB-C ports. Lightning connectors could support video output. And it's also not dependent on chipset. I brought this guy out of retirement. This is my BlackBerry Key 2. This has a Snapdragon 660. Not a great CPU, not a great CPU generation, not a great SoC even for its time. It was low power, and this helped the phone get remarkably good battery life for being a communicator. But even this phone has USB video output. So we've spread a lot of misinformation about features. And now it's time we have to like actively work to correct that misinformation. We could be adding video output to USB 2 devices on really expensive phones, and that would work great. The other phone that I always love bringing out of retirement is the LG Velvet. So Snapdragon 765, not a top of the line chip. That was a mid-ranger chip, but it supported this dual display, and because it supported this dual display, you could also pop the phone out, plug it into a display, and you got the full LG Screen Plus desktop mode experience. And this phone started at 580. I want to say it was in the 500s. I think the one model of it on T-Mobile was less expensive because it had the MediaTek blah 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 blah. But this was a mid-ranger phone that had active pen stylus support, a great headphone jack, not quad DAC, but still very good cameras, dual display capabilities, full desktop mode, and it was priced to go up against a Galaxy A70, whatever that generation was. And it was cheaper. And I got into like a really great Twitter debate with, who was it? Oh, I can't remember. He was a buddy of mine. But like, oh, but look, you put it, this thing, it's in a case and it's so thick when it's in a case. And this was thinner than a Z Fold. And dual display, and it was thinner than a Z Fold. And we're like, yeah, but then take it out of the case. What are you talking about? So we went out of our way to trash this phone. Look at all of the techies now. Really think back. We have a fondness for the LG Velvet because LG is gone now. And everyone came out with their, oh, I miss LG so much. But at the time, oh, there's no reason you should buy this phone. You should buy a Galaxy that is more expensive and does less. And that's what we keep doing over and over and over and over again. Every time you get a real good value, I can hold up a OnePlus 13 and a whole bunch of people are like, oh, but wouldn't you rather have a Galaxy that's more expensive and does less? I guess. I get that. That's what we're gonna get. Oh man. All right. So, oh, sorry. I just got this one from Doc. I see the same misalignment in terms of design and pricing as a strong sign of market stagnation. Boy, I miss LG. Give me no camera bumps just for a change. And the problem is we have market stagnation because we haven't done a good job of educating consumers. Performance, just literally performance on its own. What I can do with the SoC in this phone rivals laptop performance. So we should be expanding our commentary to show people there are times you're not going to have your laptop. There are times you're not going to have your desktop. And if you know what this thing can really do, and I don't just barf a bunch of Antutu score numbers at you, you'll be empowered to try these things on a mobile device. It's like I show photographers some of the work that I do in PhotoMate. I've sold quite a few people on buying a copy of PhotoMate. Yeah, you're not going to do all of your raw editing on a phone, but there are tons of situations where a photographer is like, yeah, I shot a couple, let me do this. Oh, you know, a Lightroom or a PhotoMate. Now I can dump these raw files in. I can literally just get a quick edit done here, get like 10 or 11 files out, ship those JPEGs off. Because it's already the device that has probably my fastest data connection on it. It's ridiculous to me how limited we're talking about this stuff. But you don't feel the stagnation if you're really trying to do things. I just did PC gaming emulation. I don't feel my devices are restricted. I feel like they're now directly competing against my Steam Deck. Not figuratively, like I install an app and install my games from Steam onto a phone and they play better than they can play on my Steam Deck. That's direct. But again, it's education. And right now, what's a computer is kind of the extent of consumer marketing education these days. Hold on, let me get a drink of coffee and then let's chew through these news stories. I want the news to be done in like 15 minutes. So please pardon if maybe I go a little light on chatting about responding to comments, responding in the chat. Let me just get through these because they're kind of mostly follow ups and just some interesting changes in policy. We have to talk the tech politics because everything we do with technology every day, all day, is political. There is no way around it. We can ignore it, but billionaires love it when we ignore it. So let's not. Okay? So 2 seconds, real quick. Okay, so starting off real quick, this is just a headline and highlight because this is something we need to keep an eye on. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but it's interesting to me in this age, in this current political climate in the Trump administration. This is written up by Josh Sisko and Leah Nyland over on Bloomberg. Amazon and Google probed by FTC over search advertising practices. The investigations, which are being conducted by the agency's Consumer Protection Unit, focus on whether the companies properly disclosed the terms and pricing for ads, said the people who asked not to be named in the matter. The FTC probes mark a new front in regulatory scrutiny of Google and Amazon, even as top technology firm executives try to win over President Donald Trump. Judges overseeing two Justice Department cases against Google have already found the company has illegal monopolies in online search and some search advertising, as well as over technology used to buy and sell ads online. So far, all of the penalties that have arisen from these types of probes and regulatory actions have been horrifically insufficient. So here's my fear. The FTC and the FCC are already being used as the punitive arms of the Trump administration. The FCC is being weaponized against media outlets that might speak out against President Trump, right? I fear that this is policy. Hey, Google, we're going to investigate you until we get things from you, and then the FTC is gonna lay off. I feel like we're taking a good I think it's good to investigate Google, and I really feel like Google should have faced much harsher penalties over like Chrome, and maybe Chrome should have been split off from Google. Google should have been forced to sell Chrome. The penalties that change a corporation's behavior need to be significant enough that the corporation feels it. We talked last week about a $3 billion fine, and you're like, that's a rounding error on the amount of time that they've been conducting bad business. So here I worry we need to keep an eye on this. In a couple months, are we going to hear some policy? Remember, we talked about conservatives complaining that your GOP fundraising emails are getting censored. So is there going to be some new policy where, oh, now fundraising emails are sent to your spam by default, and that hurts the Democrats, and now the FTC backs off on this investigation? I don't think it'll be that direct, linear, one-to-one, but this is one of the ways that the Trump administration has been using the FTC and FCC in this very kind of direct negotiating. You can't have this until you do this for us. CBS, you can't have your merger until that pesky late night talk show host just stops complaining about Trump. Yeah, sure would be a shame if your merger got held up. Oh, he's going to retire. Great, 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 great. Now we can approve your merger. So that's what I'm very skeptical. The timing of this action, it's not that I disapprove of the investigation that Google needs to be investigated. It's the agency and the timing on this make me a little anxious about what this means for the future relationships between corporations and this administration. Because this administration has done a pretty awful job at building investment opportunities and improving situations for workers and looking at international corporations bringing more work, more jobs, more infrastructure here. Case in point, this is coming from Oh, I'm not going to be able to pronounce these. I need to really get better at this. Sang Yoon, Lucia Lee, and In Yo Kim. Oh man, I did not do that well. From the Korea Economic Daily, Korea's major U.S. investment projects halted as detained LG energy workers set for release. Quote, let me just read from the top of this. The South Korean government has secured the release of about 300 nationals detained following a raid by U.S. authorities on an electric vehicle battery joint venture between Hyundai Motor Corp and LG Energy Solution in Georgia. Kang Hoon Kang Hoon Sik, Seoul's presidential chief of staff, told senior ruling party officials on Monday that negotiations with the U.S. government on their release have concluded. Quote, our government, business associations, and relevant companies worked as one to secure their release. But that also means, boy howdy, billions of dollars in joint investments, thousands of potential jobs. Now, all of it's on the line just because our current presidential administration treated high technology workers as potential criminals in like a masked raid on a facility. Because, we are already ruining jobs for like farmers and agriculture, right? Soybeans are not going to China this year. And that's going to suck for the economy. That's going to make everything worse. And so let's follow that up. I know where a bunch of illegals are going to be. Let's raid a Hyundai LG battery high technologies facility. There certainly won't be any blowback from that. Great, good, just awesome, awesome sauce. That's great. We're talking roughly, I think some of the numbers we're putting it at like 8,500, maybe 9,000 jobs that would have been in a great industry, a manufacturing industry, all the things that we're talking about bringing back to the United States. And now that's all a giant big nope pause button. So we'll have to see how that plays out. That's real good. Hold on, let me take another drink of coffee here. Okay, and in other regulatory news, this is just a follow up. We saw some of these cases playing out, and the EU has finally kind of worked out a conclusion. I think again insufficient, but very similar to what we've seen how Microsoft handles situations in the past. This is written up by the Financial Times, Barbara Mones. Microsoft avoids EU fine after competition probe. So we talked about this on the podcast a while back. The probe, blah, 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 blah. Words are hard. The probe, which began after a 2020 complaint from Slack, now part of Salesforce, accused Microsoft of abusing its market dominance by tying its video conferencing tools to its widely used suite of productivity applications. So again, in these Microsoft subscriptions for businesses, they're just lumping more and more and more together. And there is a competition argument to be made about how one company can kind of leverage their size, their scale, and whether or not people like the tool and kind of force people into a certain framework of services. We've seen the opposite of this playing out across the EU, especially with Windows 10 kind of approaching its end of life and all of these will they, won't they, can you pay for more support, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of governments saying, hey, we're going to just stop using Windows and Office just because this is too much to deal with. These computers are fully functional, but they don't have whatever hardware is necessary to get Windows 11. We're not just going to scrap this equipment. Now's a good time to switch over to Linux and use LibreOffice for our government instead. So here, Microsoft is responding to the EU and to this specifically, Slack and Salesforce saying, hey, this is a problem. We have a competitive tool. And Microsoft is just kind of taking that as a platform and adding it into a subscription already. So Teams is going to get split off from this kind of corporate office subscription strategy. So the EU seems satisfied by that. Microsoft cannot add to that subscription, I think, for 7 years. And then we'll have to see how this plays out again. And I think it's interesting because Slack is definitely looking at how can we create other products and services that compete against Microsoft. They're trying to create their own corporate solutions subscription. And now we're going to see, like, can they build over the next couple years? Is that really a viable competitive advantage against Microsoft? I really feel if these transitions in the EU start delivering, like if they start producing good results and governments can say, hey, we left Office, then that also does some damage to Salesforce's subscription competition. Because if you can leave Microsoft Office and come up with a whole suite of open source software tools instead, obviously you still need IT and infrastructure, and support costs are still really high, sometimes higher than what you might get with a subscription, but you're not paying this corporate subscription up front and you're not beholden to the business changes that Microsoft might employ. That actually could hurt Salesforce too. So we might see the number of companies and the number of governments who leave Microsoft and Teams might not go to another subscription if they can go to free software instead. So Microsoft has got like some light touch bumpers in terms of regulation on what they can do with Office 365 and corporate subscription solutions. And now we got to see, can other competitors like Salesforce improve their subscriptions to the point where it can convince other companies to do business with them instead of rolling their own open source software solutions. It's going to be the most boring corporate dry productivity kind of conversation, but I actually think that's kind of wild. In a year where Linux for gaming has helped boost Linux adoption above 5%, devices like the Steam Deck have normalized that as an experience, and we're starting to see other little glimmers, like my Chromebook can still kind of run Linux apps, and Android might get direct access to a Linux terminal. This is actually kind of the hot spot right now. My entire life I've heard this is the year of Linux, and there's never going to be one year of Linux, but man, are we starting to see some actual groundswell approach real, just daily driver business and entertainment kinds of solutions. And it's happening at both sides. It's happening at the corporate side and it's happening on the entertainment side. So it could be pretty wild. It could be really exciting to see. And now Salesforce has their work cut out for them. Because I didn't hear anyone say, hey, we're leaving Windows. We're not going to try and upgrade our hardware to switch from Windows 10 to Windows 11. No one's saying, oh, well, what we'll do is we'll switch this over and now we'll turn to Salesforce. They're saying, oh, well, if we're already swapping this stuff out, we're going to go to Linux. Might as well try some open source software. It's like the two ideas just go immediately linked. If I'm already leaving a paid operating system with paid software and I go to an open source operating system, open source software, there you go. It just works. Yeah, JGJ again, the clarification, not free, literally free as in free beer, but free as in licensing and free as in freedom. No, again, that's what I mean though, is there is, I think, a long-term business appreciation when you are not directly beholden to one monolithic company's changes in policy. Because you know what's not going to happen in Linux and open source software, even for how much you need to pay to switch that infrastructure and support that infrastructure, is 2 years down the line, LibreOffice says, oh, by the way, now AI is baked into all of your tools and you owe us a monthly subscription fee. Because that's what Microsoft did. Microsoft is trying to rug pull us. Look at all of the numbers Microsoft is posting, like, oh, people love AI in their Office apps. No, you ran right up to the line of legality and you changed my subscription without my permission, and you started me on a more expensive subscription just to tack on Copilot features in Office. And I had to go back and threaten to cancel my subscription just to get an option for Office Classic without AI. And my subscription renewal is coming up, and unfortunately I still need to pay for Office, but I'll be curious to see how does Microsoft handle that, because I switched my subscription back to what I had before. So, should be great. Should be super great. Super, super great. Love it. Love it. And one more, just in our news block and talking tech and politics, coming by way of my man crush, John Brodkin over at Ars Technica. California bill lets renters escape exclusive deals between ISPs and landlords. The bill says that by January 1st, a landlord must, quote, allow the tenant to opt out of paying for any subscription from a third-party internet service provider, such as through a bulk billing arrangement, to provide service for wired internet, cellular, or satellite service that is offered in connection with the tenancy, end quote. If a landlord fails to do so, the tenant may, quote, deduct the cost of the subscription to the third-party internet service provider from their rent, and the landlord would be prohibited from retaliating. Now, this might sound familiar because this is what we tried to get through with the FCC under the Biden administration. Remember, when liberals are in charge, consumers get things from agencies like the FCC and the FTC. When conservatives are in charge, all of this stuff gets taken away from us. So this initiative stalled, and it basically would have said a landlord, someone who runs an apartment building or has like multiple units in a condo, they can't have a pre-arranged arrangement with an internet service provider that you just have to eat. If you want to do business with another entity, there has to be allowances for that. And this is going to open up. This is going to take forever because California is so slow on all this kind of stuff, and the bureaucracy here is insane. But we were going to have this kind of regulatory policy nationwide. But of course, power changed hands and conservatives got installed, and we have regulatory capture over the FCC and the FTC. So this went away. This went away because it's better for monopolistic business practices through entities like Comcast and Spectrum. They have no incentive to encourage any kind of competition. That's what regulations should do, is foster a spirit of regulation when a market is getting overly saturated or singularly monopolistic. So we're going to get that here in California. Sucks for the rest of the country. The rest of the country could have had this too. But if you're in an apartment and you hate that you don't have options for your internet service, you can thank the GOP. And maybe that helps motivate you to consider your voting actions in the future. I doubt it, but it would be nice if whenever we talk about these kinds of things, we could use this as the data to say, both sides aren't the same. And maybe we could affect some kind of substance and change, but that's not usually what happens. So anyway, that does it for our news block. I'm going to take another drink of coffee here. I did that a little bit slower than I wanted to, but man, we're getting to the gadget block with a whole hour ready to go. So we got some really fun phone news, ARM chips, Xiaomi Pro Maxes. We got a lot. I'm stoked. This is going to be a fun gadget block. So 2 seconds and we're going to be right back in. Oh yeah, a bunch of people complaining about Microsoft and Office 365. I got to tell you, it was so exciting last year when my daughter's laptop, her first laptop for school, had Ubuntu on it, and so they got issued new laptops this school year, and I was so sad. She's frustrated. They're Chromebooks, so I'm gonna take a look at her Chromebook and she really wants to write in LibreOffice. And I'm going to see, they're like super inexpensive Chromebooks, but I'm going to see if I can get, Linux running on that, Linux app support. I don't think her teachers are versed enough in how the machines are used or handled. But I think it's time. I think it's time to start teaching my almost 10-year-old daughter sudo, apt-get, update, and just see where we can go from there. Man, it's pretty crazy. Like when you start like kind of carving out all of these individual roles, and like because we still need to foster the financial side of this, right? If we want good hardware, unfortunately, the bulk of it lives in the consumerism of Windows devices and MacBooks and Chromebooks. There's no escaping that. And it was the same situation I had with Windows on ARM, is if you want these things to get better, we kind of need to hope for some Microsoft success, but then that means we can take that hardware and do more interesting things with it. It's been slow as molasses, but we're still seeing progress on little Ubuntu builds here and Linux and Mint builds there. And I've got that new Chromebook with the awesome MediaTek chip in it, and baby steps. But it is just sort of like teaching her kind of a tech defiance. I want her to be one of those people who is not afraid of the glued shut web browser that her teachers give her, and it's okay to poke around a little. So we'll see how she does. We'll see how that goes. from Oladi, sudo make you feel real good. I love it. I love it. So one of the nerdier, I'm not going to go too deep on this. This is one of those things, again, I'm going to keep an eye out on Dr. Ian Cutress over at Tech Potato, because I feel he does the best job of summing up these industry silicon situations. If you really want to learn about the chip in your phone, beyond, I did a Geekbench and it got big number. Anyone who says that like that's their performance review, just ignore them, mute them, and never go back. You get nothing of substance from that person. That is the most useless piece of information, ostensibly to help guide you in a purchasing decision. But watch a few of Tech Potato's videos and live streams. You will get a crash course in what the silicon industry is really trying to do. This story popped up, and I'm going to be very curious to see what Dr. Ian's response is on something like this, because to me, this is a clear shot at Qualcomm's business. This is putting Qualcomm in the crosshairs and trying to find ways of devaluing the work that Qualcomm puts into their own chips. Because remember, ARM and Qualcomm had a pretty vicious IP lawsuit, IP dispute, because Qualcomm bought a company that was trying to make these new server cores, and that's eventually what became the Orion cores in the Snapdragon X Elite and in the Snapdragon 8 Elite. I hate their naming convention. So, this is a response from ARM. They're releasing these new CPU cores. So instead of like the X core and the, I forget what the different numbers are, the 700 series and the 500 series cores, we've got these Cs. So the C1 Ultra is a flagship peak performance. This is kind of replacing what I feel the X core was. Then the C1 Premium is kind of replacing what the 700 series cores were. I don't know what the difference between Premium and Pro is really going to look like, but then I'm assuming that the C1 Nano is replacing those tiny little 500 series efficiency cores. So I think it's hilarious because they show off this block of CPU cores with 2 giant cores and then 6 medium-sized cores. And wouldn't you know it, it's very similar to what an A-series Apple processor looks like. If you look at the CPU arrangement of the A19, it's often 2 big cores and 6 little cores. So I think ARM is being a little cheeky here. But in addition to launching this new CPU and GPU hardware, they are creating a whole new customizable framework. So what they've done in the past is you license the cores and then you have to go and make all of the connective SoC hardware on your own. So that's what MediaTek does, that's what Qualcomm does, that's what Samsung does. And again, the better you can design all of that connecting stuff, the platform, the better your chip is going to perform. It's why one of the reasons why I feel even when we're looking at different foundries, that Qualcomm devices can often outperform Samsung devices. I think Qualcomm does a better job of tying all the bits together. But they've gotten so good at that there's not a lot of competition. You know, MediaTek, I think, is actually finding some novel ways to compete directly against Qualcomm's dominance there. But what if? What if you could bypass Qualcomm, bypass MediaTek, go directly to ARM and say, what we want is 2 big CPU cores and 4 medium-sized cores and 2 efficiency cores with this quality of a GPU. That's what this new Lumex system looks to be. So, I think it's very telling. They have a whole bunch of quotes from industry leaders, right? So let me scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. One of the industry leaders they talk to is Samsung. This is from Vice President and Head of SoC IP Development at Samsung Electronics. At Samsung, we're excited to continue our collaboration with ARM by leveraging ARM's compute subsystem platform to develop the next generation of flagship mobile products. This would actually be a huge help that Samsung doesn't need to design everything themselves. They can go to ARM and not just license cores, but license the entire connective framework. Check out who the next industry leader is. At Honor, our mission is to bring premium experiences to more users, especially through our upper mid-range smartphones. By leveraging the ARM Lumex CSS platform, we're able to deliver smooth performance, intelligent AI features, and outstanding power efficiency that elevate everyday mobile experiences. That, to me, is a really big deal. Xiaomi is making their own chip. Google makes their own chip. Samsung makes their own chip. MediaTek and Qualcomm occupy the bulk of mobile devices, but what if an Honor could go directly to TSMC or Samsung Foundry and say, hey, we got this bespoke chip design from ARM. You already know all of the processes involved in tying all this together. And now we're going to have the Honor SoC 2025 Generation 1. And you're going to put that chip in our phones. And now an Honor doesn't have a Snapdragon or a Dimensity or an Exynos. An Honor is going to have an Honor SoC. Again, it's off-the-shelf parts. Everyone's kind of playing with the same CPU cores when they license ARM reference designs, but this immediately circumvents Qualcomm's situation here. Even Qualcomm is still building chips on ARM reference designs, but if obviously Qualcomm wants to get to a point where their Orion cores are in all of their products. But before they can get there, there's a transition. And in that transition, ARM is saying, what if we designed the chip for you and you could just slap your own label on the box? Xiaomi would suddenly not need to pay that kind of licensing fee. They still have to pay a licensing fee, but maybe their next chip design is a little more affordable. This to me is a clear attack on Qualcomm's market dominance in the premium and ultra-priced smartphone sales markets. This could be really interesting to follow. Oh yeah. Hold on, sorry, I just saw some from WX Roamer. I'm running a Snapdragon X Elite Qualcomm Orion CPU, more than I'll need for a decade, I believe. The CPU performance is phenomenal. It is so good. I hate that we're still like, oh, but Windows on ARM cannot play the video games, and you're like, all the people who don't care. I'm playing Hades 2 just fine. It's great. I can run Crisis Remastered, kinda. And beyond that, like I feel I've got what I want from a thin and light notebook. From Ola D, when I saw that review on GSM Arena, I suspected they were swinging at Qualcomm. It was already suspicious with the rumors of the next gen MediaTek having such an IPC boost at that particular time. So that's also the thing that I want to see is, will a MediaTek work more closely with ARM? I don't think MediaTek has gotten enough credit for how good their chips have gotten in a very short period of time. And we'll never know what the inside relationship looks like between MediaTek and ARM. When ARM was suing Qualcomm, I don't know, there could have been communications between MediaTek and ARM saying, what do we do? How do we do this? I don't even know what the legalities on something like that would be. So it would make a lot of sense to me, as we've seen, especially, this is so nerdy, and I'm sorry, I said I wasn't going to go too deep on silicon, but one of the most exciting improvements in performance on last year's Dimensity was improving things like memory throughput and file compression. And that sounds so boring, and I know, and I apologize, but literally everything your phone is trying to do now in opening smaller files for to work on big AI models, or taking large bits of information like high quality photo and video information and squishing it efficiently with as little loss as possible, MediaTek has leapfrogged Qualcomm in terms of that kind of performance. That's the thing that makes your phone feel faster, more dynamic, shares information with other devices more quickly, more efficiently, uses less battery power to achieve the same tasks. Everything you do, you go to a website and information comes from the website and kind of needs to be unpacked and displayed on your phone. All of that has been an enormous uplift from the Dimensity 9200 to the Dimensity 9300. And that's all the daily driver stuff that people just take for granted. But you put two devices in people's hands and one's going to feel more responsive. I want to share this video with my friend. Why is it taking so long to prepare the video? That's file compression. So we're seeing these really encouraging like early leaks and rumors. I mean, we're only a couple weeks away from both MediaTek and Qualcomm announcing their new chips, but I really want us to watch the Dimensity launch because I wonder if this is directly tied into this new initiative from ARM, if this is part of that Lumix framework. It's going to be pretty crazy to see. Oh, Ola D, and people forget about Unisoc. What was the other one? Rock chips. They're still pretty decent. Like you get something like that in an appliance, and you've got like Snapdragon 855 levels of performance in a device that absolutely does not need Snapdragon 855 levels of performance. Yeah, WX Roamer, competition in ARM is a good thing for sure. But what I'm curious is, will this actually reduce competition? Is ARM looking to be sort of a licensee for everyone to build their own chips, but they're all ARM reference design chips? You see what I mean? Like in one way, it is more competition because there will be more chips with new labels on them, but it's actually less competition because it's not MediaTek design, Samsung design, Unisoc design, Qualcomm design. It's ARM. If it's Qualcomm or ARM. And that's what we need to see from MediaTek. Let me get this out of the way here and click that off there. Okay, so that was the nerdy one. Just a little follow up. I didn't even get a chance to use it seriously, so I don't know if this was really a big loss or not. But coming by way of Abner Lee over at 9 to 5 Google, I believe Abner was the first to find this. Google pulls Daily Hub preview on Pixel 10 as it works on improvements. Daily Hub launched in public preview on the Pixel 10 series. There was a badge at the top of your screen just above the greeting, with Pixel Studio in 2024 also launching as a preview. The weather and overview of your calendar worked as expected for users, while there's also a keep these on your radar section. This can surface emails like bills, text messages, upcoming events, and keep notes that would be useful, aligned with Magic Queue. We've seen the section on some of our devices, but not very consistently. So it seems like this kind of at-a-glance philosophy was tying together all these different apps and services on your phone. Again, kind of like we're reinventing Google now, but with more LLM baggage attached to it. Google Now was already trying to achieve some of this services synergy, and I think it was doing it more deliberately, but that to me also means that it was more direct and more efficient. And if we had just built on Google Now, we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel now. But because of the inconsistencies and all the LLM baggage and all of the AI needed to operate all these different moving parts and pieces, instead of just having clear APIs and frameworks that could communicate with each other, it looks like I'm not really going to get a chance to play with this at all. It's already been sort of deprecated from Android 16, and Daily Hub will return in some future form. Somehow, Daily Hub returned is going to be a headline at some point. But I'm just, as I get older, I'm increasingly skeptical of the one overarching assistant style framework. I really want the Star Trek computer experience. What I want is to be able to pick up my phone and say, hey, phone, open up Qobuz and play my daughter's softball playlist. She's got to get hyped for a game. And it would be great if I didn't have to manually do that. But instead, I'm probably just going to have to make my own macros, right? Remember, that was the thing? You could just kind of program, or actually Bixby was pretty good at doing stuff like that too. But the whole promise of assistant style features on Cortana and Siri and Google was we were going to be able to start tying more of this together. But of course, from Alphabet's perspective, you can do that if you only live in our ecosystem of services. I don't want to use YouTube Music. I want to use Qobuz. That's what I want to do. That is my music subscription of choice. I would like to be able to hold up my phone and say, hey phone, can you open Plex and create a video playlist of my collection of Hell House movies? or Rec, REC. Can you just line up all of the Rec films in order and play them on my phone? Like, it's the year 2025. We were starting to build that kind of stuff with Cortana. It was location and it was network aware. And you could do things like, hey, Cortana, the next time I'm at a grocery store, remind me to buy gummy bears. And Cortana would say, which grocery store? And you could say, any grocery store. And so that little reminder was tied to your location. So you had to give it access to your location, but then I'd be walking by a Vons and it would say, don't forget, you wanted to buy gummy bears. Awesome. Thanks, Cortana. Run right in, get some gummy bears. That was the future we were promised like 10 years ago. And now we're trying to recreate it here. We're trying to recreate what we had 10 years ago, and we're still not there. Do you remember the Cortana contact reminders? Those were insane. Those were science fiction. I'd hold up my phone and I would say, Cortana, the next time I talk to my wife, remind me to ask about the dog's medication. And if I got a phone call, an email, or a text message from my wife, it would pop up. There'd be a little notification at the top of the screen. Don't forget to ask about the dog's medications. Are we doing stuff like that today? Because I don't think we're doing stuff like that today. Can I tell you how useful that was in Windows Phone? I almost said Windows Mobile. That was insane. And instead, we're like, oh, we can't get Daily Hub to work with at a glance. Are you insane? That with the compute power on these devices, we got to pull Daily Hub. We just can't get there. How bad? You know, AI must be doing so much of your coding at Big G these days. This is what we get when AI is doing that work to try and make the code, because it's definitely not delivering better services and solutions. Oh, what's Bionic Scoop is in the Lurk squad today. Bionic Scoop actually shared again some of the most incredible low light stage lighting action shots, pro wrestlers in our Discord, and is like, I'm so jealous. Like what Bionic Scoop gets out of his cameras. I mean, he must have really nice cameras, first of all. But what he gets out of those action shots in almost no light still breaks my brain. Latrell Jennings, it was not technically Windows Mobile. So yeah, I know Microsoft said Windows 10 Mobile, but Windows Mobile is a completely different framework. It stopped with Windows Mobile 6.6. And again, I don't need to go super geeky. Let me tell you all about my experiences with the compact iPack, which was later the HP iPack. Yeah, it's pretty silly. And Michael C. LLMs, they never admit to not knowing an answer. It's like a kid doing an oral presentation in high school, but not reading the book. We just did, my daughter and I, as part of our bedtime routine, will sometimes read Calvin and Hobbes. And we got to that section recently where he has to give the presentation on bats. And he calls them bugs. And the entire class yells at him, "Bats aren't bugs!" And my daughter just thought that was hilarious. So now, Michael C., I'm going to have to combine that with AI. I have to tell her every time you type something into Google, you're basically asking Calvin if bats are bugs, and she's gonna cackle. Oh, I'm raising such a nerd. I love it. Yeah, Bradley Larcher. Google now already was what Daily Hub is trying to do, and we don't even have Daily Hub. Google had to pull it. From Juan Carlos, I had a Windows Phone. Cortana was ahead. It was so good. It was so good. And the thing that kills me is like so much of the complaints people had against Windows Phone and Windows Mobile 10, Windows 10 for mobile, almost everything that platform was lacking could have been accomplished in the browser. The browser on Windows 10 was so good because of Continuum. You could plug your phone into a display and it would be this like Windows desktop kind of experience. And so people are like, oh, but I don't have this one app, or I can't do this from Google. Google won't let me have an app. And you're like, I used to live in Google Plus. I loved G Plus. It was a great social network. And I was not held back using it on a Windows phone because I would open up a great mobile browser and I would still do all of my stuff in Google Plus. I would share photos and get into conversations and circle people up and arrange my network and my contacts, and like it was great. I had no problems like searching through Google, using Gmail. Maps got a little weird. Sometimes the formatting on a web browser version of that would be kind of weird. But at the same time, it's why I'm still a fan of Here Maps. It's because I had no problems using, at the time, Nokia Maps. So anyway, I'm digressing. Bionic Scoop, but full frame is the king. It's almost like you know what you're doing with the camera, and that's kind of like cheating, Scoop. You realize that, right? Like if you have to use your own brain, what is even the point of buying a nice camera? So, moving right along, I do want to switch into our next topic here. I don't want to get too sidetracked, and we can save the end also for any of these other questions, or if you want to tag me on something. Last week, I made a big deal. I made a huge deal out of the leaks and rumors that the upcoming Xiaomi was going to have a rear-facing display, right? I went off on a diatribe. I'm looking at these leaked images, these leaked images, and seeing no evidence that there could be a rear display on this next Xiaomi. It bugs me so much that Xiaomi is skipping a number just so they can match Apple. That we're getting the Xiaomi 17 series instead of the Xiaomi 16 series, because it has to be the same as Apple's. But this is where I need everyone to make fun of me for being this hardcore of an investigative journalist, big air quote bunny ears on that. I need all the mocking, because I went hard. I went hard. I was on camera, like, and I don't see it. And here's a phone with a rear display. And you can see as I bend the light, you can see another rectangle, and there's a difference between the screen and the bezels. I just don't see in any of these photos Xiaomi 17. That's not a thing, guys. I don't think it's a thing. It might not be a rear display phone. So you know what I completely neglected is literally every flip style folding phone we have today. Because sitting right next to my inexpensive Lava phone with the rear ticker display, again, a phone $250 in India that just destroys most of our entry level and lower mid-ranger phones here in the United States. Sitting right next to this phone is my Xiaomi flip phone. And there, if I hold this up, you don't see any difference around the back, right? So there are these little camera cutouts, but you don't see like a bezel and a frame and a dedicated screen, because the entire panel here is a screen. There are just cutouts in the screen for where the cameras are. And now I feel like a total nincompoop, because that's obviously what Xiaomi would do. Xiaomi has this flip. See, if I turn this flip phone sideways, you have two cameras and it's an entire display on the panel here. And it took a social media post over on, I don't know how to pronounce this, Weibo? Weibo? I've only ever seen it written and I've never paid attention to anyone saying it. But on the social media post, they've got a render of what the Xiaomi 17 Pro is going to look like. And wouldn't you know it, it's basically the Xiaomi Flip on the back of a phone. The entire panel is the display. Not there are two cameras and a ticker display like we had on the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra. It's the whole thing. So now I feel like a total dork because I went so hard on this idea last week, and now I need to sort of settle myself because that makes more sense. So this is from Weibo. This is two cameras, two bigger cameras, and I bet you this little teeny camera outside of the rear display is probably going to be a gimped ultra wide. I think this is one of the areas where a lot of manufacturers are looking to save costs because ultra wide just hasn't been as popular lately. Hopefully this means it's got a good main camera sensor. On the Pro, I would assume a 1/1.28 inch type sensor, maybe a good half-inch telephoto, but limited zoom range. I'm not sure what the cavity needs to be like on that ticker display, but you probably don't want a lot of stacked electronics like ticker display, periscope depth, and then SoC and components underneath that. So my guess is the Pro might have a half-inch type telephoto so that it can still have a reasonably good zoom range, probably a 1/3 inch, a 1/1.3 inch type main camera, and then probably a dinky ultra wide, because the costs are going into making this rear display work. But yeah, I felt real silly when I saw that. It's like literally the most obvious thing that anyone could have called. And here I am like, no, but forensically, you've got to look at like how light bends and refracts. See, like if I hold this phone up, you can see where the difference is in the panel. I just don't see any differences, guys. I don't see any differences on that panel on the 17. That might not even be a Xiaomi 17. And now I feel like such a dork. So Xiaomi 17 Pro, almost definitely going to have a rear ticker display. Moving right along. Footloose and fancy free. Let me get this back over here. So, who really misses their Virtual Boy? Is anyone out there? You Nintendo fans? I don't talk a lot about Nintendo and gaming and stuff like that, but is anyone really opining, longingly for that weird neck cramping, put it on a desk, shove your face into it, oddly red, eye-searing, monochromatic gaming experience? I only bring it up because Nintendo is considering the nostalgia of this, and I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious if this idea has legs, and I'm prefacing what I think is curious. Let me just get to the actual announcement here. This is coming by way of Nintendo of America on Twitter's. Oh, you know what? Actually, let me mute this because I don't know what kind of music they have. And even if you try to say nice things about Nintendo, they like to sue you. So this is Nintendo of America. Virtual Boy Nintendo Classics will be available for Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack members on Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 starting February 17th, 2026. So February of next year, we're going to start getting Virtual Boy Classics. And let me play this little teaser video here. Nintendo Switch 2, and see the little Joy-Cons click. And then this comes into focus. It's kind of the shadowed Virtual Boy console. And I think this is an interesting idea. So Virtual Boy, you turn it around, you put your face inside like Darth Vader's helmet in one of the, I think, the prequels, and you can see, these red monochromatic games. And I think this is kind of funny because it's Virtual Boy for Nintendo Switch. So you open this Virtual Boy and there's no computing inside of it. You put in your Nintendo Switch, and then those lenses on the inside just kind of split the view, and you have a 3D view. And this looks really familiar, right? People, this looks familiar. People know what I'm talking about. Yeah? If we use a screen on another device already, and then we just put lenses, what does that look like? I'm turning around right here because I don't know why I always keep this in arm's reach, but this is my Google VR headset where you would put a phone in this right here, and there are these two lenses, and there's no computing in this. It's just a shell, but you put your phone in here and you could have VR kinds of experiences. There was this one really great shooter. It was this old Western, and you would like look around and you'd have to like aim and shoot using this little like controller puck thing. And your phone ran it, and you would be dripping with sweat because this was back in the era of the Snapdragon 820, 821. And that chip ran way better than the Snapdragon 810, but it was still a really hot experience putting all of the compute encased in this with no ability to vent heat right up against your eyeballs. So it got real toasty when you would use this. But I think this idea has kind of come around again. What if developers can create a whole new era of Virtual Boy style games using the Nintendo Switch? The Nintendo Switch 2 finally has enough compute power where if you go split screen and you are rendering graphics per eyeball, I don't think I'd want to play a whole, like I wouldn't want to play Breath of the Wild in a Virtual Boy, leaning against my desk and really crouched forward and uncomfortable, and it's not very ergonomic. I wouldn't want to suspend the weight of a Switch 2 on my neck and have that enclosed and put up on my face. But there's a potential here for some really interesting novelty and revisiting the idea of VR in a more sedentary position, but with the gear that you've already got. So this new Virtual Boy dock is going to be kind of expensive. It's going to be, I think it's going to be like $100. That's pricey. But you could also achieve that, and I'm sure there will be aftermarket solutions. Just like Daydream was more expensive for Google, you had cardboard, and someone could make the same style lens apparatus. I had a really great flexible VR headset. It was this like soft rubber squishy foam thing, and you could put any phone in there because it could stretch to fit the dimensions of the phone. It was great. It was actually one of my favorite ways to play with cardboard back in the day. But I think we could do this now. I think we could do it with a Nintendo Switch. What I would love to see, and now we're getting into the fun nerdcore stuff, is let's say you take your Nintendo Switch and you don't want to game in a Virtual Boy, but you also have a pair of these cinema display glasses. You have your Ray Neos, your Rokids, your X-Reels, something like this. And I could plug this in, and then I could just switch to 3D mode on these. All of these glasses have some kind of mode for 3D video. And I could switch to 3D mode, and the Nintendo Switch 2 goes, I know what that is, and feeds your Virtual Boy into a much lighter weight, higher quality style display. You see where I'm going with this? We could start building a real practical VR future off of this kind of experience. The Nintendo Switch 2 is powerful enough. It can really drive these. Imagine Tetris effect, but in cinema glasses. Yeah, it's not going to be as immersive, as blacked out as Tetris effect on a proper VR headset. But when you're traveling, are you really going to pack a proper VR headset? Because you could take these glasses and this will fit in a shirt pocket. And then that shirt pocket experience plugs directly into your Switch too. I don't know. This is like the most hopeful I've been for a Nintendo wacky accessory announcement in a really long time. Not because I think Nintendo is going to rush and deliver what I think is going to be the best consumer-facing experience. I think Nintendo wants you to spend $100 on a plastic Virtual Boy cradle for your Switch 2. But the way that they've done this opens up this little glimmer of potential I don't even know that Nintendo is directly aware of. But other developers could start playing in this space. This idea just gets popular for its kitsch or its novelty, could open the door for some really exciting developments after that. Maybe I do want to play Breath of the Wild in 3D on a pair of cinema display glasses, because that would look really cool. Maybe that is something I'm interested in. And that could result from a move like this. We could see some tinkering, some experimentation, some, again, playing with the compute power of these devices in a more fun or a more novel way. So, I don't think Nintendo is the company to deliver it, but I think they've unintentionally opened the door to potential use cases, and some of these accessories start to make a lot of sense when we can combine them with what Nintendo's already delivered. All right, hold on. I went talking on that much longer than I intended to. Yeah, Ola D and JGJ are both saying it's a VR viewer. Ola D saying it's Google Cardboard. From Z-Dog, the Virtual Boy Classics just feel like another Nintendo physical unit to be scalped. I mean, I've had these kinds of debates with people, and I get it. I have a buddy who's super into the Switch ecosystem, and like the Switch and the Switch 2 are the primary gaming experiences in his family's household. And I understand. I understand that like he is paying for the Nintendo subscriptions. He's bought all the games. He buys games at launch. He's kind of already absorbed the impact of game prices going higher, of the Switch being a more expensive console. But he's still coming back with these arguments like, one, it's IP. These are the games I really want my family to be playing. And two, it's an ecosystem which makes it easy. And so I'm going to keep paying the inflated prices because I know it's going to be easy. And he might get excited about a Virtual Boy. He's close to my age, so I think he would remember when Virtual Boy launched and flopped, and how this will probably be the true presentation of Virtual Boy games, better than Virtual Boy could ever have delivered them back in the day, right? Like, if you want to see what it's like to play a Virtual Boy game, this is going to be a better experience on a Switch than on a Virtual Boy. So I get the feeling like this is constantly like scalping Nintendo consumers, and I feel that sentiment a lot. But also, at the other hand, it's like, you know, there are some times I wish my daughter could play some Mario. I wish my daughter could play some Mario Kart. Like, little moments there is like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. Then I get on with it, and she's totally stoked that there's a new Sonic racing game coming out soon. We're gonna jam on this next Sonic racing game, so we get over it pretty quick. I don't know. It's just tricky to me. Like, I keep hoping more awareness and more education will mean the PC gaming side of this will start to build more momentum with people who are traditionally console gamers. The Steam Deck helped kick that door open. All of the follow-up gaming consoles have helped reinforce the idea. Now we just need more people to, dip a toe, try it out. Every time I show people, like, look at this incredible collection of games that I have on the PC, and I can install them on any PC, and I haven't purchased many of them at full price. Oh, really? So you got them on sale? Is that like $60? No, I got You can get RoboCop now for like $4 and like a half a ham sandwich. Like, it's kind of a stupid amount of entertainment for $4. So you should check that out. $4? Is the game not very good? No, the game's amazing. It's just PC games go on real sales. So funny. From Ola D, the Vision Pro has so much potential. You're paying a lot of potential for that Apple Vision Pro. From Michael C, I saw a VR Google Cardboard kind of contraption at the Dollar Tree for 99 cents a couple years ago. I would have bought it, but it was meant for like the iPhone 6 or something, and my phones were too big. Same thing, Daydream does not fit current phones anymore. And really, what I want, the reason why I bring up those cinema glasses is because this is what I want from Nintendo too. So you've got the Virtual Boy, and you put it in this cradle. But that also means that we have the same problem that we had with Daydream. This isn't going to vent very well. You're going to accumulate more heat containing the device. Even if you leave the vents free where the fan kicks on, you're still enclosing the rest of the phone that can passively vent heat. So instead, why not leave the device completely out and exposed and move the displays to your face? Just the displays, none of the compute power right by your eyeballs. LG tried to do this with the LG Friends. There was like a VR attachment that was just displays, but the VR, the head movement, and the sensors communicated with your phone. But it meant that your phone and the compute power wasn't right up against your eyeballs. Problem was, it just didn't work very well back then. It would work a lot better today, and it does. If I pop my X Reels onto a phone, it is way less heat right by my eyeballs. I don't know. It's so funny. Oh, Mr. Maug, the XR glasses I have makes me want to keep my PC handheld for longer. I don't know if that's a positive. The XR glasses I have makes me want to keep my PC handheld for longer. I'm assuming you mean that's a good thing. That you want to keep your gaming handheld because you're looking through your glasses. I'm sorry. The comment, the phrasing on that, I think I get what you mean. Okay. From Goat V8. Nintendo is probably going to try and patent VR. We've got a patent on putting lenses in front of your eyes. So now, if you own glasses for seeing and vision correction, like if you need glasses to read or to drive at night, you need to pay us a licensing fee. From Mr. Mag, you know what's crazy? The Odin 3 handheld is cheaper than a Switch 2 and comes with an 8 Elite. Imagine if the Switch 2 had that kind of power. Switch 2's just launched the beginning of its console cycle, and it's already less powerful than a premium smartphone. But again, we'd have to educate consumers to even know what that means. Yep, Goat V8. Not to mention Humble Bundle, Fanatical, GOG, great deals. That's where I've gotten most of my really good game deals. Like, I think I got RoboCop from Fanatical. I have tons of games from Humble Bundles. I've been trying to get more into GOG just so I can download installers directly. Like, I've been backing up some of my, even if it's a game I already own on Steam, when I see a good sale, I'll pick it up again on GOG and then I'll download the installer. I'm not becoming a digital prepper, but I'm kind of becoming a digital prepper. Like, if the apocalypse happens and I can keep a hard drive with all of my favorite games safe, then maybe I can help rebuild society through gaming. I've got all these solar panels and this one little mini PC and this backlog of GOG games, and it's okay, people. Just come together. I'll show you Control. Oh, Z-Dog, there is a world where the LG G5 led to modular phones and Android taking off. LG and Moto. And even then, like, we had some glimmers. There was Essential tried to do some of that too. We could have had it. We could have had it. And a bunch of nerds went, but it's not good enough. I don't think average people are dumb. Literally every time a reviewer holds up a $1,000 phone and says, but what about average consumers? Basically what they're saying is that I think average people are morons. Every time. They can't even handle the idea of the concept of being exposed to the potential of doing something more on their phone. They just want to scroll the TikToks. And techies seem to think that that's a good argument. Everyone around me is an idiot. So sell them a $1,500 phone that does less? Okay. So moving right along, I just want to highlight this because they did the work. The folks at GSM Arena have a great article, and I hope you will click on the article and give them some traffic. If you go to theapple.com how to repair iPhone and prices, that's not the actual web URL. So there is the iPhone repair and service website from support.apple.com. And you can go down and you can select what the damage is, and you can select the product and the model, and then you can get an estimate on that repair. That is kind of annoying to go through that whole process. But the folks at GSM Arena took the iPhone 17, 17 Pro, 17 Pro Max, and 17 Air, and they went and did all of the searching for you. So you can just come to thegsmarena.com. That's not the URL. Don't go there. But you can go to GSM and they've got all of the repairs listed out, like back glass, cracked screen, camera repair replacements. And I just want to point out, so like a battery, cracked screen, where's the back? A replacement of the glass back cover is $159 for all 4 models. It's $159 to replace the back glass. And I hate to say this, but that is a humongous improvement over previous generations of the iPhone. Like, I think into the iPhone 8, if you were not under Apple Care and you needed to replace the back glass on an iPhone 8, it was something insane, like $400 to replace the back glass. But let's say you damage the back glass and you damage the cameras on an iPhone 17. Not an Air, not a Plus, not a Pro, iPhone 17. It's going to cost you $160 to replace glass, and on the iPhone 17, it's $170 to replace the cameras. The cameras on the iPhone 17 are only worth $10 more than the rear panel glass. And so many people are going to tell me how iPhone cameras are great and just work. In the bill of materials of repair, your cameras on the back of the iPhone 17 are marginally more expensive than the rear case in the back glass. And that's what Apple thinks of you. That's how Apple is squeezing you for more money for the same experience every single year. And you're fine with it. And techies are cool. But I mean, this is the phone for average consumers and basic people, and they're dumb. So it's okay that they get scalped with bad cameras, because if they cared, they would buy an iPhone Air, which is more expensive. It has the same camera on it, less cameras on it. So if you'd like the full rundown on all of the different parts and permutations and the costs associated, man, just general repairs for these phones are going to be wildly expensive. The screen replacements are pretty pricey. I would highly recommend going and checking out GSM Arena. Here's how much a battery replacement will cost for the iPhone 17 models and the iPhone Air. It's not great. It's not great. And then I just want to wrap. Oh no, I've got one other. I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time on this. Let me go ahead and just pop it up. So again, over on Weibo, we got another leak just to look at the color options for the OnePlus 15, and they kind of look like what I thought they would look like. I think it's a little iPhoneier than I would like. So what we're gonna see for the OnePlus 15 is an overall color. There's a black, there's sort of a gray or a silver, and then there's sort of a plum. It's not quite a thunder purple. It's more of a matte finish. It's a more muted color. But, I mean, it's kind of a nice color. I think it's just really subtle. But on the back of the phone now, it looks like we're taking a frame similar to the OnePlus 13R. It's a little more rounded in the corners, so it looks more like an iPhone. And then the rear camera housing is a square, like an older iPhone, with the color accent around the camera lenses. So there's a black square on the body of a silver phone, and then a silver oval around two camera sensors and a silver circle around the third. So it's kind of like, like an iPhone, I want to say like what, an iPhone 12? Had that really pronounced square housing. But it's kind of like the baby between an iPhone and an iPhone Pro. Because a lot of our iPhones now have that two-circle camera solution really obviously standing out from the back of the phone. And this is trying to look like three camera circles on the back, which looks like an iPhone Pro. I think it's bland and derivative. I still really like what OnePlus does. Pricing is going to be very critical for how these phones perform in the market. It looks to me like OnePlus is trying to emulate the sales success of iQOO, because the iQOO performance phones have done very well over this last year. But then aesthetically, how can we make our phone look more like an iPhone? And if it's in a case and at a distance, people will look at it and go, oh, that looks like an iPhone Pro. That looks like one of the gooder iPhones because there are three circles on the back. And that's cool. It's not why I buy a phone. I literally cannot care what the back of my phone looks like because I hold up phones like this. And this isn't an attractive phone, but it's practical and it makes a statement regarding the kind of features I care about in terms of photography. So I really like, I really like holding up my OnePlus 13. It stands out, it looks different, it's got a unique vibe. There's also a benefit. Remember how Apple made a big deal out of, well, now our camera housing has more of our antennas, and that's better for reception. And people are clucking along going of, yes, of course, it must be. And here, OnePlus was already doing that. And no one was like, oh, yeah, but that's better for reception. Everyone's like, oh, I don't know if I like the circle. Do I need an Oreo on the back of my phone? What's up with that OnePlus? But of course, techies would actually have to educate their audiences and inform rather than just regurgitate the marketing bullet points of massive trillion-dollar corporations. So that brings us to our last one. This is the official press release from Sony. And again, we're mostly just kind of talking about design because I'm not super excited. It's the new Sony Xperia 10. It's the 10 Mark 7. And I'm going to scroll through. This is the actual Sony website. And it looks like they turned the Sony camera bar, which is usually an oval on the side of the phone going vertical, and they just turned it horizontal. And so now it looks a lot like a Pixel. It's this hard-edged, raised circle, raised oval camera housing with a big Sony logo and two kind of good camera sensors there. I just don't feel Sony has much juice on this anymore. I keep hoping for their 10 series, the Sony Xperia 10, to start finding more footing properly in the mid-range, finding other ways to be more competitive, to be more exciting. And I am really anxious. It really looks to me like Sony is looking at Samsung. And Samsung is desperate to try and cut costs to improve profits and making all of their phones pain points until you get to the most expensive device. Like the Galaxy S series has been horrifically uninspiring since the S20. But they have managed to push more of their consumers up to the Ultra. The Ultra is now actually selling better than it has these last several years. But not through merit. It's just the exhaustion of, this is a consumer who would have gotten an S25 Plus. This is the exhaustion of a consumer who maybe would have wanted an S24, but they need better battery life. You know, you keep lobster potting up, but you're burning out your consumers by doing that. And anyone who really does spend up to an S25 Ultra when really they just needed a bigger screen and a bigger battery, that is a consumer I have to believe is going to be aggressive in trying to hold on to their phone for longer. So you're sacrificing more sort of refreshes and iterations because there's nothing to iterate. You've actually scaled back on features. They're trying to pull an Apple, y'all. Remember how I started that one article, my own written piece with the DOJ, saying Apple executives want to regress on features. They want you to keep paying more and literally give you poorer technology year over year, because really what you have, isn't it already too good? Aren't you worried that it's too good? So I kind of feel like Sony is looking at Samsung trying to copy Apple. And I just can't get excited about something like that. So we look at the rest of the Xperia 10 Mark 7, and it now has a little side button. They're calling it a shutter button for enhanced camera functionality. But if I'm reading through this, it might only be a single click button. I don't know that it's a two-stage. So what it says, the dedicated shutter button located on the side of the smartphone actions both launching the camera app and taking photos with a single press, even when the screen is locked. Long pressing the button instantly launches the camera app so you never miss important shots. So I think this is just an action button, but one that'll just be locked to taking a picture, but not really something that you can hold or focus from. And then they get into the camera sensors. Capture bright and clear image quality, especially in low light scenes, thanks to the new larger sensors. The ultra wide is equipped with a 1/3 inch sensor. That is super tiny. And the 24mm lens features a newly installed 1/1.56 inch type sensor, which is bigger than the sensor in the previous Xperia 10. So Apple is trying to impress us with the sensor on the iPhone Air and the iPhone 17, and boy, isn't it so exciting? It's got 50 megapixels. And it's a 1/1.56, and that's a fine daily driver sensor. It's the same sensor size that is currently in the OnePlus 13R. So why would you want to buy a OnePlus 13R, which has an enormous battery and radically fast battery charging and a trio of good practical daily driver sensors and a mute rocker switch so you can control your notifications and alerts and sounds? Why would you buy this when you can spend $400 more and get it on an iPhone? Right? Makes perfect sense to me. So anyway, Sony is moving this up, but then also, like, they're still using a Snapdragon 6 series. I think it is a newer version. Actually, let me kind of they're trying to say, oh, it even comes with Google Gemini and Circle to Search, and nobody cares. No, okay, so it's the Snapdragon 6 Gen 3. For some reason, I thought maybe this might launch us on the 6 Gen 4. So no, it's not a technically newer chip. It is sort of in the last generation of Snapdragon SoCs. As the top, I finally got a 7 Gen 4. So I do have a phone with a Snapdragon 7 Gen 4. I was, for some reason in my brain, I thought the Xperia was going to launch the 6 Gen 4. But all of this adds up. So sorry, I just kind of need to get to the end of this. All of this contributes to a conversation and an expectation on this device. To me, we are now lower mid-range. To me, we are now starting with a Snapdragon 6. We are starting to get into that crossover between entry-level devices and lower mid-range. There should be some overlap there. But to me, that's like a $300 phone. Yeah, it's cool that you gave us the 1/1.56 inch type sensor, but I can find that sensor and bigger sensors on Infinix and Techno phones in the $200 to $300 price range. I believe, hold on, let me look this up. This is the Lava 3 5G. I want to say it's a 1/1. Lava Agni 3 5G. I've actually got to find the specs on it. That's what's going to be tricky. GSM Arena. Lava Agni 5G. Nope. Let me just try Lava Agni 3. There we go. And let me just look up camera sensor. Yeah. So this is like a sub $250 phone with a rear display, and the main camera sensor is a 1/1.55. So it's in the same class, sensor size, and generation as the 1/1.56. It might be a less expensive sensor, but we're talking in terms of sensor size. This is a sub $300 phone. In many areas, it's going to be a sub $250 phone that comes with, mine has 256 gig of storage on it, and that's the same size camera sensor as what's going to be on this Sony. So how much do we think Sony is going to charge for a phone that is now approaching entry-level performance and entry-level features? Well, you're right, Juan. It's going to cost €450. €450. Sub $250. And the chip in this phone, this Lava Agni 3, is more powerful than a Snapdragon 6 Gen 3. It actually needs to be more powerful because there's like a whole smartwatch experience on the back of the phone. It needs to run two different experiences on the front screen and on the back screen. So this has a Dimensity 7000 in it versus Sony going with a Snapdragon 6 Gen 3. And A bunch of people, oh, but specs don't matter. Cool. Go spend more on a device that does less. If specs don't matter, tell that to your family and friends. I'm sure they'll take it totally fine. Hey, you want to buy that new Sony? It's real cool to spend more on a phone that does less. Well, what do you mean? There will be a follow up question, and then you would have to explain to them that 450 euro for a Sony is really expensive compared to the other 400 euro devices that are going to slap the poop out of this phone. And I just want Sony to remember that they used to be a dominant force in electronics, but they're not bringing that energy to their phones, y'all. They're not bringing that to Xperia. Xperia is trying to follow Samsung in watering down as much as they possibly can, and it makes me so sad. Like the Xperia 1 should be a horrifically expensive phone that caters to the niche of high performance photography enthusiasts and pairs with Sony Alpha cameras and does crazy wild things with camera sensors, leading the charge on the incredible camera sensor technology that Sony has to offer. And instead, it's a 1080p screen with the smallest camera sensors on a phone, over $1,200. And now the Xperia 10 is well past in what I could recommend as I mean, if you get one of these on a crazy sale, go for it. They're cute looking phones. They kind of look like squarer, more rectangular pixels. Fine. If you can get one of these for a couple $100, like $200, that's a monster buy. It'll go toe to toe with some of the purchasing recommendations that I have against an Infinix or a Techno. Great. But at 450 euro, what are we doing? And why are we okay telling techies to downplay specs, that specs don't matter? And that's the advice they're going to go and give their family and friends. I need to be confrontational on this. Why are you okay with your family and friends getting scalped? Are you that bitter of a nerd? Someone called you a nerd once and they insulted your D&D campaign, and now I must make sure everybody pays. Like, what happened? This used to be better. This used to be way more fun. Let me take a drink of coffee here and we can wrap up just a couple minutes before my voice completely fails. If there's anything y'all want to ask or we want to get to. It's so bad. I can't. Oh man, WX Roamer. So yeah, this is like complicated. Again, you have to be an enthusiast to grok this, but I feel you on this. One, the Ram Hurricane inline six engine is more powerful than the Hemi V8, and consumers will go for the more expensive Hemi V8 engine every time. Branding matters. I can't let go. That whole campaign with Dodge. It's got a Hemi. Does it have a Hemi? It's got a Hemi. And that same era was also when Dodge would put in and it's got a DVD. And you're like, Dodge marketing is exactly the regressive, debilitating, fostering ignorance kind of ad campaign that I complain about in tech. And I'm just glad, again, someone who's really looking at a work truck and there's no replacement for displacement. Fine, let that guy get burned. Because anyone who cares is really going to look up well, what do I need this work truck for? And they aren't going to be impressed by, well, one's got a Hemi. You got to have a Hemi. Depending on what you need to do, that's exactly it. And I want to bring that enthusiast, legit enthusiast, not just, I like to I was said something really dirty. I like to look at the specs and feel good. That's I feel the energy we need to bring. From Anthony, 450 euro is approximately $530 USD. So if you could make the jump from 530 to 600, then that's the difference between an Xperia 10 Mark 7 and a OnePlus 13R. And there is no world in which the Xperia 10 Mark 7 touches this phone right here. I mean, like, similarly, I don't think we're too far off the pricing. They've definitely gotten more expensive, but I got like a Poco F. And you're like, this isn't even like the F Ultra or the F Bestest or whatever they're calling it now. It's like, this phone slaps the poop out of the Xperia 10. I have to believe one of the reasons why Xiaomi has gotten so aggressive with all of the permutations of like Poco devices and all of their sub-brands is because they are grossly outselling what Sony is trying to accomplish. And then that doesn't even get you into, maybe you go and buy a 2-year-old premium ultra flagship phone, and that's still going to be in the ballpark of an Xperia 10 Mark 7 now, because these phones devalue so ridiculously fast. For Mr. Maug, I feel like Sony got complacent with PlayStation and had that mentality trickle down to the rest of their products. From Paltrax, yeah, fine, cut features, but don't charge more for it. Again, if like an iPhone Air was coming in at $600, I don't think I'd be quite so cranky about it. But I want there to be an iPhone 17 Plus for someone who wants a bigger screen and the best battery life on an iPhone. And that doesn't exist. They got rid of the Plus, and now if you want a bigger screen, you have to suffer the worst battery life in the iPhone range, and you get to pay the same. It's amazing. Now, Fat Produce, I have made it a hobby trying to keep old tech alive. It is a very respectable hobby, and I salute you for that, Andrew. From Daniel, Xperia 1 phones are insanely pricey. I know it's a niche device, but it doesn't perform well in its niche. Every other brand seems to perform better than Sony. So there was an era, like especially from Xperia 1 Mark III to 1 Mark V, you would make compromises on things like sensor size, but you had native camera solutions that were professional focused. You had synergy with Sony Alpha cameras where you could plug like a cable, one cable into your Sony Alpha, and then you could broadcast. You could use your Xperia as the brain to broadcast. And then even though the camera sensors were smaller, you had variable optics in the telephoto, and you had 4K 120 across all 3 camera sensors. I can hold up my Xiaomi. I still don't have 4K 120 across all 4 camera sensors. I have 4K 120 on 2 of those sensors. So Sony was ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff that up till the Xperia 1 Mark V, they were more competitive than people gave them credit for. But now things like that really great Sony eye autofocus, that Terminator style, lock on the iris of your subject. Now I think a lot of other companies have caught up, especially Vivo and Xiaomi. I just hold up my phone and I see that little indicator on my daughter's eye. I know I don't have to tap to focus on her face. I can immediately go to that shutter. That is an experience I used to only have on a Sony, and now I've got it with significantly better camera sensors than what are in the Xperia 1 series now. So I'm not going to go back. I want the headphone jack, I want the memory card slot, but the core photography experience is just better. So I can't compromise the core sensor optics focusing experience to get these supplemental features like a headphone jack and a memory card slot. So I'm totally stuck. I need an Xperia 1 Mark V with a new SoC and better battery technology and better battery charging speeds, and with the camera sensors that Sony will sell everybody else but does not put into their own phones. It's maddening. So, Hello Moto, I just don't understand why diesel never took off in the US like it did in Europe. They're so much better. They can be, But part of the problem was a lot of the reasons why people went diesel in the EU was based on lies. Don't forget how Volkswagen tanked that market pretty bad by not delivering what they were promising. But I'm with you, there are a lot of things that would actually help improve here in diesel, especially if we could mix in like quantities of biodiesel. We could use different things to kind of augment our fuel. That would be cool. I actually did want diesel to be a bigger deal here in the US. From Daniel, also Xperia devices are not available worldwide, so I don't know what's the point of releasing them. I can vibe. I think it's fine if Sony is like just looking at whatever markets they're going to sell to. I actually said, back in the Xperia 1 Mark IV days, don't get comfy. Sony is looking at their sales data and they're eventually only going to sell limited in the EU and in China and Japan. And that's kind of what's played out. If you can't sell a phone here in the United States, why keep sending the phone to the United States? And it's the same thing. Like, I think this is why we're seeing such significant cost-cutting measures from OnePlus. It's why Motorola does not send a premium tier device here anymore. Instead of doing the work to invest in relationships with consumers, build up your market, iterate on good products. This is all hard work, and it would take 3 to 5 years of constant market presence and advertising and marketing, because that's the only thing that's going to break through to consumers, is if they see marketing for 4 or 5 years. Oh, right, motos exist. It's the only way you're going to get through. And if a company's not willing to do that, they should leave the United States. There's just no point. I'm going to dip my toe in, and influencer marketing will make up the difference. Because all of those influencers will hold up your phone and then say, but really, shouldn't you buy an iPhone? And so, yeah, you got millions of views reinforcing why people should not buy your product. If you're not willing to try and talk directly to consumers, then there's no hope of you building any momentum here. And Sony, for a long time, has been reticent to play ball with the United States. They've killed all of their carrier contracts. I think the last one was Verizon for the Xperia Pro. They just don't want to deal with how phones are sold in the United States. And I don't blame them. I mean, I think that sucks. OnePlus dropped their carrier contracts too. It's a miserable way to do business here. But if you're not going to have a carrier contract where people can really see your devices, you need to do anything else to try and build a relationship directly with consumers. And that's where these companies just completely fall apart. Yeah, hello Moto. Sony just aren't trying to be competitive, full stop. I mean, yeah, why be competitive if you can make money being not competitive? It's the dream. From Mike Mack, I asked this earlier and may have missed your comment. I'm at work, but what is your opinion on some of the component changes to bring the cost down on the OnePlus 15? Curious how much cheaper it will be. I feel OnePlus is looking at the success of devices like the iQOO, and if it's priced well, I'm not going to be bothered. I mean, I'm going to be bothered personally because I live out of my OnePlus 13. I think it's a great balance of price to performance. It's got reasonably good cameras on it. It is just an insane fast charging device. There's a reason why I go for the OnePlus 13 over the 13R. But it really looks to me like they're going to try and recreate the OnePlus 11. And the OnePlus 11 was not a legit premium tier device. It was a way to rein in costs after kind of the disaster of the OnePlus 10 Pro. You rein in costs, you simplify the device, and the OnePlus 11 versus the iQOO 11 was a really hot year for both labels in terms of sales. Like, both of those phones did really well. So I think that's what OnePlus is looking to recreate. If you price it aggressively and you're bringing it closer to the price of a 13R, I think it gets a very solid recommendation. But I'm expecting this to kind of be the love child of the 13 and the 13R. It will not be the same kind of device as the OnePlus 13. And it just makes me sad because I think if OnePlus came out and said, hey, we're going to do a limited batch run of the OnePlus 15 Pro, and it's basically a Find X9, I think that could do really well. You just rebadge a Find X9 as a OnePlus 13 Pro, and you say we're gonna sell 50,000 units, and then it's done, and then it's gone. And I think that could be huge. But obviously they won't do that because the regulatory costs are really high, the packaging, distribution, all of that is very cost prohibitive. But I think it would be a really bold move from the company to kind of create the feeling of that desire from the classic OnePlus days, where you had to have like a lottery system to see who could buy your phone. I would love to see them do that again. And they already have the Find X9, run with that. Just say, this is our one-off limited edition OnePlus 15 Pro. OnePlus 15 is a great phone. Vast majority of consumers are going to do great with it. It's coming in at a lower price than the OnePlus 13. We're not going to tell you why. But for our true fans, instead of an FE, which is just recycling old parts, we're going to do a limited run. These are for our super fans, the people who are the most passionate and love OnePlus the most. Here is 50,000 units OnePlus 15 Pro, and your phone is going to be badged with the number that you are. I'm number 3012 of 50,000. I think that would be huge. I think that'd be awesome, but we know that's not going to happen. Yeah, Fat Produce, I still love my Xperia 1 Mark V. The only thing holding it back are the lack of future updates. That's a pretty big one thing holding it back. But yeah, no, I feel you. Again, Xperia 1 Mark V, they went out on a banger. The 1 Mark 6 is not the same tier of device, even though it costs the same. From John Gao, I just need an Xperia 1 Mark V and a Xiaomi Vivo Ultra glued together. Man, you just make yourself like a music phone. What was that on Always Sunny? They make like a camera phone or something like that. I don't know. It's stupid. I think it's funny. WX Romer, Juan, is nothing doing a good job making relationships with consumers in the US? No. I mean, there's no direct relationship there. There's no direct communication there. That's what I mean is like nothing is trying to recreate the OnePlus hype machine playbook. There's a lot of style, a lot of aesthetic, but they're only talking to phone enthusiasts. And everyone's going to argue with me, but some phone enthusiasts are different than others. But the only people who know about nothing are the people who are generally aware of phones outside of Apple, Google, Samsung. So only people who are entertained and have a passing interest in keeping up with phone news even though nothing exists. And here in the United States, I mean, the name of the brand is apt. There is almost no direct communication with consumers. There is no awareness at all. So who is going to take a chance on a phone called nothing? This is the most important daily driver piece of technology that a consumer can own today. So do you take a chance on a company called nothing that you've had no awareness of, you have no relationship with that idea, and then you say, I'm going to put everything I do, my entire life, into this device? Who in your circle of family or friends is down for that? I would surmise the only people who are even tangentially aware and might be interested are the people who are tech enthusiasts to some degree, that they keep up with news and product launches. That's not many people. Again, you look at the subscriber count on a massive YouTube channel talking about tech, and what, maybe 10 million subscribers? And we're going to move 1.2 billion phones this next year. So how influential are those influencers? Nothing has to talk directly to people, and that is expensive. Marketing and advertising is expensive, and as far as I can see, they're doing almost none. Yeah, Antonio, but this is what we got to get away from. Antonio says, I completely agree with you. If Sony devices were sold through T-Mobile, I'd have already bought one. So, man, I want to say the last Sony sold through T-Mobile. No, I mean, I don't even think the compacts were sold through T-Mobile. So here's what happens though, is a carrier can then dictate the terms of how that phone is built. So look at what happened with the OnePlus 9. There was a OnePlus 9, OnePlus 9 Pro, and then a OnePlus Verizon 5G. So the OnePlus 9 and the OnePlus 9 Verizon were very similar, but they were different enough that accessories couldn't work between. So you had to make sure you bought a Verizon OnePlus case. So they had to manufacture different cases. And the Verizon OnePlus 9 was significantly more expensive because it had to have millimeter wave support when no one had access to millimeter wave. OnePlus left their carrier agreements and left their relationship with T-Mobile because T-Mobile had influence over how they were building their phones and what price points they really needed. And then those phones would just sit on shelves. So T-Mobile would dictate, this is what we want, this is what we need. You need to be able to supply this warehouse full of devices, and then we're going to take your phone and put it in the back dusty corner next to LG devices that no one ever gets to, and all of our sales reps are going to force people right into the front of the store with Apple and Samsung. So every single time you have a carrier relationship, if you can't bribe the carrier to force your phone into consumers' hands, it's a huge net loss for the manufacturer. You can, again, it's like when artists say, oh, but you'll get such great exposure. You're like, but if you're not paying me, I'm not giving you my art. I die of exposure. So carriers saying, oh, but you get all this free marketing and people, foot traffic, and people will see your devices. No, they won't. They're going to be way back there. And no one's ever going to see them. And the few people who do see them, they aren't going to buy them. They're walking the store while they wait for the screen tech to put on their screen protector. I'm sorry, they're waiting for the carrier tech to put on their screen protector on their new iPhone. They're not back there really seriously considering and shopping an LG or a OnePlus. So every single time we lean into the carrier model, it is phenomenally bad for competition. And if that's the only way you can score a phone, I totally get it. That's how people have to manage their finances. But as soon as you get out from under the thumb of your carrier, you see that there's this choice and this freedom in, I just want to buy a good phone, not have an extra payment on a monthly cell phone plan. I don't want to lease a phone forever and not really technically ever own it. And I think a device like a OnePlus 13R starts making a lot more sense, right? So anyway, I'm not trying to pick on you, but I just hear that a lot when people say like, oh, they need to be in carrier stores. They were. How'd that go for them? It went real bad. We ended up with the OnePlus 9 and the OnePlus 10 Pro, and then OnePlus said, this doesn't make any sense. And they released the OnePlus 11 and it sold respectably well. That's what we should want. We should want Motorola to come over here and say, hey, here's a new Edge. This is our premium flagship slab phone. It's high performance. It does all this cool stuff. It's got the new screen sharing ready for whatever we're calling it. It's a productivity monster. And we're finally committing to more than a year of operating system updates. But they need to advertise that directly to consumers, and they don't have all the kitsch of, oh, it folds. Look at, don't you remember the Moto Razr? It folded and it could close, and you open it and you close it. Oh, it's like a Moto Razr. And that's not working for them. Moto's going to leave the United States. They are the number 3 manufacturer of phones in the United States, but basically just on the burner phones and entry-level devices at the lowest end of the market. And they're moving precious few people up to more premium devices. How many Samsung folding phones do you see in the wild versus how many Moto Razrs? Because Moto doesn't advertise. This is so stupid. Why bother bringing the phone to the United States and not telling anyone that it exists? Sorry, I'm way behind on this chat, and we do have to start wrapping this up. I can feel my voice is actively starting to betray me here. People talking about pixels, flashing lineage, you can keep phones running longer. From Z-Dog, I think nothing is on track to become another big phone player, but on the time span of half decades. I hope so. I'd love to see another manufacturer rise up. I mean, I don't think the techno umbrella of devices gets enough coverage, gets enough attention. I think all of the Indian phones are going to start becoming more interesting. Phones actually designed, built, sold for India as a market. I know people say like, "Oh, but this might not be the experience people want or people need," but I have a hard time. I have a hard time picking up an Infinix and seeing what that thing can do as a daily driver, average consumer kind of experience, and seeing it's like half the price of a Galaxy A series, and it does what the Galaxy A series can do. And a lot of the criticisms that I see are very superficial and aesthetic. Oh, but I don't like that this skin does this, and maybe the notifications swipe different. And you know who's not going to care? Someone spending $200 on a phone. They're not going to care. But you know who might care? Is if someone picked up a Lava Agni and they saw, oh, look at this cute little ticker. It's got like a puppy on the back. And the puppy like does little wacky dances when I'm looking at the back of my phone. Like, if it's novelty, just go novel, right? Because you can get novelty at sub $300. And it's novelty that does not exist on $1,200 devices. So when I look at nothing, I see their new phone is encroaching on the high end of the premium tier of the smartphone market. I have to ask, why would I choose a Nothing Phone 3, over getting a Vivo X200 Pro delivered here? They're pretty close in price. And one is going to be a lot more powerful than the other. One is going to have way better cameras. So what about the Nothing? It's the aesthetic. I have that little dot matrix display on the back. I have a hard time with Nothing's business model because it seems so much like a retread of the early hype days that we didn't really like from OnePlus, where people were smashing their phones, the flagship killer marketing. You had the lottery system. Oh, their phones sold out so quickly. Yeah, because they could only make like 1,000 phones, right? So for Nothing to become a bigger player, you need to be a trustable manufacturer so that someone wants to put all of their daily life into that phone. And I don't see where novelty gets us there. What in that novelty convinces someone to put down a Pixel or put down a Galaxy and go, that's the one. That's what I want to spend all day, every day with. And especially at that price. And the consumer psychology on this is intense because the consumers we're trying to reach with novelty and aesthetic don't know the brand exists. So first we just got to do all the legwork, teaching them that they exist, and then making the comparative argument that this is the phone you want to put your life into instead of a Galaxy. I just don't see that happening over the next 5 years. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that Nothing turns out to be a brilliant competitive player in the space and it shakes up the smartphone market and people are energized and we're stoked about fun, funky, cool new phones and stuff. I don't see it. I kind of don't. I think we've convinced people that phones are dead and boring and that you need AI in your glasses and that's going to be the next phase, when we had this brilliant opportunity, especially during the pandemic. We had this huge, brilliant gap in the market where we could have driven home how much of a computer your phone has become. And we could have educated all of these consumers into, oh, I can plug it into this. I can use these glasses. I can break out a keyboard and a mouse. I can play games. Look, I plugged in a controller. We had so much opportunity there to expand on what the phone could be, and instead, we convinced everyone to shrink what they do on a phone. And this one looks prettier, and this one has better cases, and this one now has wireless charging, And this one's got glyphs and lights on the back. Don't you want a phone with RGBs? My LG V50 had RGBs on the back. My Razer phone too. It's right there. I can see it in my bookshelf. It's a gaming phone. It wasn't dramatically different than other phones of its generation. Had a high refresh rate display before that was sort of a mandatory feature, but it had RGBs on the back. Isn't that what moves a phone, y'all? That's why we have the Razer phone, what it would be, the Razer phone 12 today. I don't remember how long ago that was. That's why Razer took off. It's because everyone needed the RGBs. We needed the aesthetic, pretty lights on the back of our phone, just like the Black Shark gaming phones. Remember, that's why Black Shark gaming phones are the most impressive gaming phones today, is because they had shoulder triggers and RGBs. Oh wait, they don't exist anymore. I'm sorry, I'm being real snarky, but I'm telling y'all, if you're coming at me with aesthetic, I'm going to pivot to computer every single time. And the thing that bothers me is aesthetic is temporary, it's seasonal, it's yearly. You care about aesthetic for the novelty of that moment, and then it fades into the background. It only sustains when new novelty arrives. It's fashion. It's fast fashion. It's disposable. It doesn't root itself in the confidence of using it for longer periods of time. Because then once you get past the novelty, well, it's kind of the same as any other device. Some ways poorer than a number of devices sold at the same price. Novelty and thinness and design and aesthetic are these lazy, tropey talking points that influencers can point to. It's so much fun. I'm going to unbox 20 different cases for my new iPhone. And it's the most disgusting, vomitous bile of content. I'm literally just opening up products so that you can watch me open up product and you can click on my affiliate links to buy product. And hopefully you get enough of a dopamine hit as a consumer out there that you'll feel like you're opening product. And then you can buy product from me if you want that experience yourself of opening product. And I'd rather be playing Cuphead on my phone. Because you can do that now. I'd rather be playing Crysis Remastered or Tomb Raider 2013 on my phone, because my phone can now play Tomb Raider 2013 better than a gaming laptop from 2015. And using less power. And I'd rather do that. I'd rather show that. And I'd rather show you what real camera sensor improvements can do on the back of a Vivo or a Xiaomi than talking about this lens has 50 megapixels on it now. Because tech reviewers are starting to say things like 50 megapixel lens. And that is nonsensical. But it's becoming sensical because people keep repeating it. And that's not the tech future I wanted. And I know I'm on the losing side of this, but man, does it suck watching it happen in real time. It is really not fun. I want to find the fun, because the fun stuff is really fun. And it's not inaccessible to consumers, because consumers are not blithering idiots, but we got to show them there is fun to be had. And it's just such a bummer. Sorry, I'm way behind on this chat. People talking about WhatsApp, some folks talking about like the brick and mortar experience. So Antonio is saying, the problem with buying phones not tied to carriers have their own risks. I don't want to spend so much money on a device not tied to a carrier. It's why I won't ever import a phone from overseas. And that's fine. But like, again, you could go to a OnePlus, buy a OnePlus from Best Buy. You'd use Best Buy's protection policies and return policies. You can even finance if you wanted to. Trade in a phone at Best Buy, finance it. Might not get as good a deal as your carrier, but you'd be out from under the thumb of your carrier. Again, it's like, the thing is, I don't want you to just say, well, I've tried nothing and now I'm all out of ideas. I want you to try anything. I'm not overly concerned about importing a phone. I've now had many really positive experiences. Like, again, one of the biggies, like going hands on the Xiaomi 12S Ultra. Do you know how well this phone has aged? Since I did research and I looked at the specs, and I've now seen multiple like comparisons, and this is a phone that still competes really well against a Pixel 10 XL and wins a lot of fights. And it's multiple years old now, right? So I'm not overly bothered by that. If you're a techie and you want to dig deeper into this stuff, we're sending a lot of FUD. Oh, I don't want to do that. I mean, what if this happened? Oh, that could be bad. Okay. But there are still other opportunities and other options for you to try anything different. But you won't get different. You'll increasingly get the same if you keep doing the same things. Well, I'll leave shopping my carrier when something else happens. But until then, I'm going to keep shopping at my carrier. Well, then no. You'll get nothing. You'll get no new. Not the phone brand, nothing. Words are hard. You keep repeating the same pattern of behavior, you're going to keep getting the same outcomes. If you're only willing to give carriers your money, then you're only going to have carrier options. Hold on one second, and we got to shut this this show down. Hold on. From shut them or shut him. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Shutham. I hope that Vivo would grow even bigger. I believe it was Vivo and iQOO posted some of the biggest numbers in growth in the Asian and Pacific regions. And especially, like, funnily enough, like they saw some significant sales increases in India. We covered that, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So Vivo actually is doing remarkably well, especially iQOO. Again, I brought this up. iQOO sales numbers eclipsed what like OnePlus and a couple other sub brands were doing. And that's why I think OnePlus is looking at scaling back and trying to reduce prices. But this iQOO 13 has been a really heavy hitter as with the entire iQOO range. So Vivo iQOO, and funnily enough, that means more FunTouch devices are out there right now. It's kind of a big deal. That kind of growth in this market, they're not approaching like Pixel growth internationally, but they are beating out a lot of other players like Poco that we normally associate with sort of ruling in that flagship killer price performance space. Vazikos, the Razer Phone 9 is being announced next month in a parallel universe. That would have been nice. I would have loved it. From Shutham, would you do a comparison of the 12S Ultra versus the Pixel 10 Pro? So I did one for the Pixel 9 Pro, and there's not a lot different with the Pixel 10 Pro, so you can catch that on the Patreon. It's pretty good. And Shutham also saying, for sure, iQOO is the new Redmi. From Antonio, I'm trying the Best Buy approach you suggest here. I just got the OnePlus 13, but I can't recommend it to others because they have no clue how to look into secular radios to ensure its work. So that, I gotcha. That is another consumer education situation that won't change until there's consumer interest. You can't wait for better information on radio compatibility with Verizon's messed up network to then say, well, we just got to sit on our bottoms until everything is fixed and perfect for the consumers. And we will do nothing until everything is spoon-fed to them. No, you need to educate people. And you know what you can do is you can actually take that information and go talk to Best Buy. You can tell them, hey, you know what would be great is if we came up with a serial box health information on what networks work best with this phone. Just big pictures. What networks work best on the OnePlus, and then T-Mobile networks, and then you could have Mint and Google Fi, and then under that would be AT&T networks, and any of their MVNOs. And then at the bottom would be Verizon, because Verizon's millimeter wave support is flippin' stupid, and I don't like doing business with Verizon. At the bottom would be a picture of Juan's frowny face under Verizon. And you can recommend that. Instead of saying in a live chat on a podcast like, oh, but that's the can't do it. You could try, but I can't recommend it to anybody. You could take that exact comment that you just gave me and go hit Best Buy Corporate. And I bet you if everybody in this chat went and did the same thing, Best Buy Corporate, and they said, hey, you know what? We need better consumer education out there. Internationally, they have to put better disclosures on things like network compatibility, because they have real cell phone carrier competition overseas. And they even have to start listing things like repairability scores. And you could go to Best Buy and say, hey, you know what's going to be really important to me, and I will do more business and recommend more people use your services if you can tell me how repairable this device is. Can you just put a graphic from iFixit on this product when iFixit reviews it? There's nothing stopping you. But if we just sit here in live streams and go, no, there's just no way. I mean, I can't tell my aunt to go buy a phone from Best Buy. She has to go through her carrier because she's not going to understand the radio compatibility. I could explain it to her, but she's not going to know. So I can't recommend it. So it's just the way it is. It's going to stay this way forever. Then it's going to stay this way forever. We can be the change we want to see in the world. So I am so sorry. I could not get to my mouse in time to stop that cough. I gotta end this stream. I've gone way over, and my voice is, this is the worst failure I think I've had in a while. So I have a lot more coming out. I'm hopefully gonna have some really cool accessories to talk about, some 4K streaming devices, some earbuds that I've been sitting on for way too long. I'm still writing up my experiences on the X200 FE. Lots of stuff coming out, so please stay tuned. Some sponsored videos. I think we'll have some fun. But it has been a trying week not being able to shoot video. And again, I think I am going to have to turn around and start doing more written reviews to kind of make up some of this backlog. So that could be fun. SomeGadgetGuy.com, you'll see articles, not just videos. And then, of course, the biggie is, of course, while I'm sort of fighting my feels on Twitch, the best place to get notifications, alerts on new content, to join a proper community, have the offline conversations during the week is on my Patreon. Patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. That's what's helped keeping the lights on here in the Gadget Lab. It's absolutely not YouTube revenue anymore, especially if we're going to try and pad out some of these conversations, look at comparisons, longer term views, and how updates affect our devices. If people say they care about that stuff, we've got to find ways to support it. And I cannot thank my patrons enough for contributing and supporting and then joining in the discussions. Like, I posted my article about the iPhone Air on somegadgetguy.com, and I think it has one comment. And I posted that same article on patreon.com/somegadgetguy, and it has a couple dozen comments. So what is a more interesting conversation about that topic? And if people keep going to my Patreon, I'm going to keep supporting the more interactive experience over on my Patreon. That conversation is why I wrote the article. I wanted to engage with people and have them share thoughts and also test me on this stuff. I might have some of this wrong. Maybe I have it wrong. Maybe you want to spend more on a phone that has fewer cameras and a smaller battery. Maybe I am incorrect in what I think you should get for your money. Maybe you want to spend more for a gadget that has fewer features. And the best place, apparently, to have that conversation right now isn't YouTube, isn't somegadgetguy.com. It is patreon.com/somegadgetguy. So, folks, thank you for hanging in there with me. I know I let a little more biology get through on this week's podcast than I intended to. There will be, of course, the video replay, and the audio version of this will be going out later this afternoon. And I hope everybody out there has an amazing week. I hope you do awesome with your technology. I hope you are awesome with your technology. And I hope you continue to take care of yourselves so you can keep taking care of your friends and your family and be the amazing tech neighbor who will teach them about radio compatibility that I know you can be. These friends around you, these family members around you, need help to not get scalped by massive manufacturers and massive corporations. They do not know what they don't know, and they just need a little guidance. And if you're watching a podcast like mine, you are uniquely positioned to help a lot of people not get scalped by massive tech corporations. And I know you can do it. Even when it's a thankless job, I know you can be there. People need it. So I'll catch you back here next week. Another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe, take care. I love you all, and I'll catch you back.